Right, second night of bailing, fourth cut, third cut for this new stand. 9 o'clock, just gone 9 o'clock. Still 32 degrees outside according to the tractor. Only running 70% steam on this lot. It just goes to show that every paddock is different. And at that, we're about 13.5% roundabouts. I tried running it at 80%, which I did last night, which wasn't quite as hot, but it was getting up there to the 17s. So I kind of figure that this one is a bit fresher. You can see the green regrowth, being a new stand, and everything was watered 3 times this cut to account for the heat, being February, and it's been stinking hot during February. So I think even though it's only 9 o'clock and there's no dew, and there will be no dew because it's 37 today, it's going to be 39 tomorrow apparently, I think it's pulling a bit of what I would call coolness out of the regrowth, and that was sort of giving me, with the 80% steam, too much of a moisture reading. Right, there goes one broken string. First broken string in 2 days. But pressure's still okay, bale weight's fine, increase the load a bit. Steam off for turning so that you don't end up with a wet slug. Yeah, there's a little bit of an art to it. You can see that it's blowing off while you're turning. Steam back on, cruise control. Yes, your windrows are what sort of determines what moisture you end up with too. It's very hard when they're lighter windrows to judge how much steam you need. The last paddock last night, even though it was 1 o'clock in the morning when I was finishing, I only needed 45 or 49% steam, because the windrows, being a new paddock as well, it was a lot lighter than this one. So I had to increase ground speed to about 15 k's an hour and decrease the steam to try and keep it in around that 12 to 13% mark. Still going okay. It's a little bit hard to hold it steady while you're bailing. You can see the steam back there at the pickup. So the plan is hit this early. We're still talking showers in the morning early, so I don't have any extra raking tonight, because now with this, well, the last 2 nights, if I didn't have that bloody thing back there, I wouldn't have been able to bail at all, because there was no dew at all this morning, and there will be no dew at all tomorrow. So despite it being ready to go, you would have just had to sit there and suck it and see and pray to God that you didn't get a thunderstorm dump down on you. But now even though it is 9 o'clock, without the steamer, that pressure reading up there, instead of 1260, would be more like 2,500, 3,000, easy 3,000, and they'd just be smashed up stalks, basically. Especially this time of night. Even with no dew at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, it would be impossible to bail and have it looking like it did yesterday. And like what this will look like in the morning. And consistent bales, start to finish. No just nicely perfect bales for half an hour and then either too wet or too dry. It's just consistent. You get your reading there, and if you can keep it sort of somewhere around that mark, as long as your windrows are even and your humidity doesn't vary too much, which that starts to go up, you just drop your steam back. They are just consistent bricks. Handle perfectly, stack perfectly. No spongy bales because it's too dry. Just square bricks, basically. So yeah, the plan is, since I don't have anything to rake tonight, because that's, well, getting back to the story, that is the other advantage of the steamer. Previously, with a 165, 170 acres or more, I would have had to do it in three days, 3 goes, because it's just too hard to get it baled without the steamer in a bigger lot. So I was sort of aiming for that. Well, you could get the pivot done, which is 65, 72 acres, the whole paddock, or a couple of 50-acre blocks would be fine, sort of, but you'd still run out of moisture at the end. So doing any more than that was virtually impossible on your own. So now I can reasonably comfortably push out 80, 84, 85 acres in one night easily enough, and then also rake up the next lot. So you're not by the time you finish, since you can start earlier in the evening, as soon as the sun sort of has disappeared, then you're still raking at about the time that you want to rake, rather than trying to be in 2 places at the same time. So it's condensed it down from 3 days to 2 days, basically. But one thing I will say is, day 2, or since you rake the first night, leave it sit there during the day to finish curing properly, because that is one thing with the steamer, it has to be cured. You can't have green stems at all, like you can sort of get away with a little bit if you're using acid normally. So it has to be dry. So rake it up that night like I would, leave it sit there, bale it that evening. For argument's sake, last night, 8:30, 8:45 started baling. or 8:30-ish. Finished baling 1 AM, straight off the baler, straight onto the rake. Finished raking about 6:30 or something. I was home by 10 to 7, end of milking, and didn't have cows to feed because since it's stinking hot, I'd already fed out the night before. Same with this morning, they're already fed, or they will be. And then just went carting and stacking. So by the time you've done all that, if it's a heavy cut, it can end up turning into virtually 2 days with bugger all sleep, basically. Virtually nothing. So I would have left this sitting out overnight, which it is the coolest part of the day for it to sit out and cool down anyway, obviously, as opposed to baling in the morning when you've got the heat of the day building, so the bales don't get a chance to cool down. So they can cool down a little bit overnight, but as soon as I finish baling tonight, I will start carting these. Plan is pyramid stack them loosely, well, 3 bales high and then 3 on top anyway, in the shed with an air gap, and I will just come back in a couple of days or something and restack them, since it's going to be stinking hot and can't be watering, or when I get a chance anyway. I'll restack them once they've cooled down, hopefully, if they haven't cooled down enough. But since I'm only running 70% steam, I'm kind of hoping that they're not going to be too hot anyway. So I'd rather them in the shed than sitting out in the paddock and get an unforeseen series of showers or a thunderstorm happen to dump something on them, because these are going to be beautiful bales, and the last thing I want is for them to be not as beautiful. So that's where we're up to at the moment.